I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to be on a panel discussion with the distinguished guests here, because it's a really, these guys are amazing. They've done some amazing things in Salt Lake and really impacted the community using kind of a design thinking methodology. And I think what we'd like to start off with is to sort of explain what design thinking is, so that you kind of have a framework to then put our individual discussions in. And then afterwards, what we'd like to do is sort of open it up, and then where you guys can ask us questions and address certain issues about innovation in Utah, how things are spun off, some of the issues that we talk about. So I think to start off, what we'd really like to introduce is what design is. You know, and design is this innate power that we have to conceive things. We are tool builders as human beings. And I think in this sort of discussion of design, it's what we do naturally. You think about in everything that you do, there is a plan, there's a conception, and so we're all part of this design community, engineers, scientists, business leaders, graphic designers, we all kind of design things. But what we'll talk about is this particular characteristic of design thinking. So what I'd like to say is design thinking is sort of a particular methodology that has sort of emerged out of architecture, industrial design, particularly IDEO, and then it's been sort of educated in the business world through certain business schools, Kellogg School of Business and other places, that are really looking at how do you solve complex problems when you don't know what the answer is. And I think this idea that we live in a world where there are really no clear answers, there are fuzzy boundaries, how do you creatively problem solve in this? And I think this idea of design thinking is this methodological approach that designers for a long time have sort of utilized in studio environments that are primarily based upon particular problems. So we'll just sort of show the methodology. And we'll go into a little bit more detail through our own individual projects, but really this idea of observation. Now, I don't think that this is a very deep, sort of meaningful observation where you really look at and embrace the complexity of an issue and the societal context that problems are occurring. And so sort of sitting back and watching what happens, watching workflow of people, watching social interactions, so that you fully understand all of the parameters of the problem, rather than reducing it down to a set of small areas that you can focus on. It's really embracing it, because after all, design solutions go into contexts where human beings are working. And human beings are messy and ugly, and they think different things, they have different priorities, they have different agendas. And oftentimes, if you don't take that into consideration, things don't work. It works for a small group of people, but not for a broad group of people. So then taking all of that information that you observed and coming up with an analysis. And this analysis is really, so I use the term of this garage sale approach, of putting all the information out on the table to see what patterns and relationships emerge out of that, rather than forcing a particular hypothesis or an agenda on it. You sort of let it emerge out by manipulating all of these elements. So if you've seen discussions and seen videos about design thinking, they all have sticky pads. That's a great way to put ideas out and then be able to rearrange them to look for these patterns that you may not have seen before. Then this idea of ideation really is divergent thinking at its best. How do you brainstorm? How do you come up with different ideas? How do you see the world? How do you suspend Judgment, how do you become a 3-year-old again? And it's like, well, why can't cars fly? And why can't roads, why can't cars navigate on roads by themselves? Those are sort of in this ideation phase, this blue sky thinking of just trying to come up with new things. Because we have a heuristic bias to see the world how we have experienced it. And if we don't think outside of how we've experienced it, we're going to do the exact same thing over and over. Then this idea of prototyping, where is iterations, multiple iterations, very quickly to generate and test hypotheses. If you've ever gone into an architecture studio, an industrial design studio, an art studio, there is stuff everywhere. It's full of cardboard, it's full of tape, it's full of hot glue, etc. Then taking that prototype information and disseminate. How do you disseminate? How do you communicate information to someone so they actually care? We were just having a great conversation about how do you package something so that people listen? Where we're bombarded with stuff every day. How do you package this so people really care and see the impact that it has? And so, while this may be laid out in this sort of semi-linear way, the circles are to indicate that it's incredibly messy. And that you have to go back and forth along this path to solve problems. So within this, there are 4 characteristics that I want to highlight that will come up in a variety of our discussions in different ways. One characteristic is that this design thinking is empathetic. It is really about understanding the individuals who you are designing something for and what their motivations are. It is truly about observation and getting in their shoes so you can generate great solutions. And it's about the faces, which really are the stories behind these individuals, and understanding those stories and allowing those stories to be heard. Right? The next characteristic is it's creative. It is a creative enterprise that looks at all solutions, all possible ways of combining things, mashups of how you put and cram stuff together, how you take a leg from a doll and bolt it on its head. Just any which way to think outside of what we've done before into the creation of something new. Right? This other idea that it's ambiguous. There's really no way to understand what the boundaries are and how you untangle this mess. There's a great book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball, which is about a corporate executive that worked at Hallmark that is navigating around and trying to figure out a way in a corporate world not to get ensnared by the system. Well, we can't do that because that's how our system works. So this is trying to stay outside of that path with these really fuzzy boundaries and be comfortable in that position and actually revel in it and enjoy not knowing. And the last one is sort of being inclusive, including all the major stakeholders that have a say, very interdisciplinary. The coordinator, oftentimes, if you think about what an architect does, architects don't build buildings. They really design and then manage the construction of it. They're a hub. And in some ways, this design thinking is sort of this hub of having some ideas and then bringing in the appropriate resources to actually do it, to complete it. Which oftentimes you don't know until you get into something, and then you have to bring those different groups in. So I just want to keep those things in mind with that understanding as we go through.